Most people wake up and take the world for granted. But for me, a white futon isn't just bedding, it's a miracle. I've never slept in a real bed, so I spend my mornings chasing the sun, hanging fabric in the garden, just to capture a few hours of warmth. Just imagining laying my head down on something that fluffy makes my heart race. It's the kind of simple human dream a girl like me isn't supposed to have. My peaceful morning ends the second Sunao opens her eyes. She's the original, the girl whose life I'm borrowed from, and she's currently buried under the covers like a hibernating bear. For her, school is a burden. For me, it's my entire reason for being. She swats at the air with a lazy groan, her voice muffled by the blankets. 2 days in a row is too much effort, head out for me. I scrub my face and prepare for the transformation into the girl the world expects to see. While I'm obsessing over the details of her morning, the girl herself is only concerned with one thing: her stomach. Sunao doesn't even look up as she asks what's for breakfast, completely oblivious to the fact that I'm the one keeping her reality from falling apart. I rattle off the menu: grilled salmon, white rice, miso soup, but she cuts me off before I can finish. To her, I'm a high-tech appliance that happens to have her face. She looks at me with that blunt, lazy honesty that only she can get away with. Just by letting out some blood, you don't feel any pain at all. Napkins, smartphone, the weight of a backpack I wasn't born to carry. Sunao goes back to sleep and I step out into the world. My feet hit the pavement with a weight that feels both heavy and hollow. I have to remind myself with every step: I'm not a human, I'm a stand-in. The wind pulls at my hair as I pedal toward the school gates. In the eyes of the city, I am Sunao Aikawa. But the truth is simpler and much more terrifying: I am a replica. When the real Sunao was 7 years old, she brought me into being a spitting image to carry her voice and her burdens. My role is to be her second, a shadow that walks the halls while the real girl sleeps soundly in her room. No one has caught on. No one even suspects that the girl at the locker is a fake. The bell rings, ending the period. But my work doesn't stop. I stretch, checking the duty board. It's my turn to clean the classroom, and unlike the girl I'm replacing, I actually care about getting it right. I'm reaching for the eraser when a hand stops me. It's Sanada-kun. He's tall, quiet, and recently back from a long hospital stay. He offers to cover the left half of the board, brushing off my worry about his club activities. I'm not doing any club stuff right now, he says, his gaze steady and far too observant for my comfort. He doesn't want to talk, he just wants to work. We erase in a rhythmic, awkward silence until the board is spotless. I mumble a thank you as he shoulders his bag and heads for the door, leaving me alone in a room that suddenly feels way too large. His kindness should be a relief, but instead it feels like a physical weight in my chest. According to Sunao's memories, she visited him while he was in the hospital, but those memories didn't transfer to me correctly. I'm staring at my notebook, the pen trembling in my hand. How can I deserve his help when I don't even remember being there for him? I escape the classroom for the one place I feel at home: the literature club. Ricchan is already there, practically vibrating with excitement. She's my junior, and she's the only person whose eyes shine with pure, unfiltered admiration when we're together. She waves a frantic hand, her glasses sliding down her nose. "Ah, senpai, glad you could make it." She hands over her latest draft, her eyes wide as she waits for my verdict. We dive into the world of doubles and doppelgangers, concepts that feel a little too close to home. I try to stay professional, explaining the nuances of the words, but every time I describe a figure separate from oneself, I can feel the secret under my skin itching to get out. I have to be honest with her. If she wants the readers to follow, she has to be clearer. Ricchan takes the critique like a physical blow, letting out a dramatic "bwah" and slumping over the table. But the second I promise to read it again, she's back, her face beaming with that terrifyingly bright smile. Sure. The room settles into a comfortable hum. Ricchan is lost in her heroines and plot points, while I'm content just to sit in the shade. But then she looks up, curious, and asks why I've never written a novel of my own. I freeze. It's a simple question with a very complicated answer. I don't think I could write a single letter, even if I were turned upside down. To create something, you have to have something inside you that's yours. I wonder what Sunao would do if she were in my place. But she isn't here, and I'll never get the chance to ask her. I remember the day I was born like it was yesterday. Sunao was terrified of a playdate, hiding behind a closet door and trembling. She didn't want to go, so she made me. Her eyes were desperate as she made a plea that became my entire world. "Can you go to the community center in my place and make up with Ricchan for me? We look identical, down to the last strand of hair. On a biological level, there's no difference between us. But in the gap between our souls, there is a river too wide to cross. She is the source, I am the reflection, and no matter how close we stand, we are always worlds apart. Every time I'm called forth, I'm born with a new set of her memories. Her strongest emotions are written in a clear, bold font, easy to read and act upon, but the things she has no interest in? Those are smeared with ink, difficult to decipher, leaving me to stumble through her life like a blind girl in a familiar room. As the school year went on, Sunao fell further and further behind. She stopped even trying to keep up. I offered to help her study, but her response was a lazy dismissal that changed my life forever. "Sure, go and take the test for me." I take her tests. I get her good scores. I make up with her friends when she's been blunt, and I run marathons that would make her faint. I give my everything for her sake. I exist to live the life she's too tired to touch. I've never eaten breakfast, and I've almost never had dinner. I only get sweets if Sunao is willing to share. She doesn't know that I find actual joy in the small things, like the taste of rice seasoning packets. To her, those moments are just fuel. To me, they are proof that I'm here. She hates studying, but I've come to enjoy it. She hates exercise, but I love the way my lungs burn when I run. If she weren't so set in her ways, I wouldn't need to exist. But she is, and so am I. The heat in the club room is unbearable. Ricchan is practically melting over the table, muttering about how we need a new fan. I check the budget, but we both know the truth. Asking for more money from the school is basically asking for the impossible. As a replica, I don't get pocket money. Every yen I have is embezzled from the chores I do for Sunao's family. I'm doing the math in my head. If I just had 10 more 50-yen coins, we could afford a cheap one from the electronics store. But before I can finish the thought, there's a knock at the door. Ka-clack. The door opens, and there he is. Sanada-kun. My heart does a frantic somersault as he asks if he can sign up for the club. I'm so flustered I can barely speak, stammering out a confused "who?" that makes him tilt his head in confusion. "What do you mean who?" I do. Ricchan is absolutely over the moon, her glasses practically glowing as she welcomes him with open arms. I'm a mess, frantically pointing toward the shelf where the admission notices are hidden. I hand it over with a trembling hand, my face burning so hot I'm surprised I'm not melting. He fills out the form with a steady hand. Shuya Sanada. He's officially one of us now. Ricchan is beaming, and I'm just trying to remember how to breathe. It's a small club, just the three of us, but having him here makes everything feel different. We walk to the teacher's lounge to drop off the paperwork. The advisor isn't there, so we just leave it on her desk under the suspicious gaze of a few other teachers. It's a quiet moment, just the two of us walking back, the silence between us stretched thin. The door to the lounge slams shut, and the guilt I felt earlier comes rushing back. I'm ready to head back to the club room and hide, but Sanada surprises me. He stops in the middle of the hallway, looking back with that same steady gaze. "Mind if we go stop by the library?" I ask him if he likes books, and his answer is a lukewarm kinda. I try to fill the silence, babbling about how I mostly read novels and how Ricchan is the real writer of the group. I'm trying so hard to be the girl he remembers from the hospital, even though I don't know who that girl was. He asks if he has to write for the club journal, and I quickly reassure him he doesn't have to. I start explaining our process, my hands moving as I get swept up in the details of the cultural festival. He watches me, a slight frown on his face. "You're pretty serious about all this club activity stuff, Aikawa." I won't deny it. I love this club. But then he drops a bomb telling me I gave him the vibe of the kind of girls who just hang around the gym to fawn over guys. I'm mortified, my face going bright red as I desperately try to change the subject, pointing toward the shelves to find him a book. I ask if any stories from his textbook left an impression, and he remembers a line from Kokoro. "Anyone without spiritual aspirations is a fool." It's a harsh line, but he agrees to give the book a read. For a moment, the gap between my memories and my reality doesn't matter. We're just two students talking about a story. We get back to the club room just in time for a disaster. The old fan gives one last, pathetic groan and stops spinning. Ricchan is in full crisis mode, screaming that we're all going to overheat and die. But Sanada, calm as ever, just offers to bring one from his house. If it helps, I can bring one over. Ricchan is ready to declare him our official savior. I'm still hesitating, asking if it's really okay, but he just brushes it off like it's nothing. He has this way of making the world feel simple, and I find myself watching him, my heart doing that strange rhythmic thud again. It's no big deal to him, but it means everything to us. Since we can't afford to throw the fan away as oversized garbage, Ricchan decides there's only one logical thing to do: hold a memorial service. We stand over the plastic remains, bowing our heads in mock solemnity. I thank the fan for its lengthy service, trying to keep a straight face while Ricchan mutters her final amen. Sanada walks in on the weirdest funeral in history. He stares at us for a long second. Just as Ricchan explains, we're paying our respects. And then, he just joins in. He stands there with us, hands clasped, thanking a broken piece of plastic for its sacrifice. He's definitely one of us. The absurdity passes, leaving a warmth that has nothing to do with the broken fan. I look at him, really look at him, and find myself smiling. The guilt is still there, tucked away in the shadows of my heart, but for now, the sun is shining. Welcome to the literature club, Sanada-kun. The air in the bedroom is stagnant, heavy with the weight of an identity being lived by two different people. Sunao sits on the edge of the bed, her eyes sharp and predatory, watching her own face on a body she no longer bothers to move. She breaks the silence with a cold demand. Hey, care to explain what's going on here? Now stands there, flustered, the perfect copy suddenly glitching under the original's scrutiny. Sunao isn't interested in school gossip. She's annoyed that Sanada, a boy from her own past, is suddenly orbiting her replica. He's joined the literature club, he's talking about fans and mundane nonsense, and Sunao can't stand that her ghost is becoming more popular than the person who cast it. Now tries to play it down, explaining the broken fan and Sanada's easy kindness. But Sunao sees right through the warmth. She doesn't want her replica getting comfortable or thinking she's actually earned this attention. Her voice drops, sharp enough to cut through Nao's soft excuses. So don't let it get to your head. The truth is a hollow ache in Nao's chest. There is no version of her that has dreams or a destination. She is a mirror, reflecting Sunao's potential back at the world so the original can hide in the dark. As long as she maintains the grades and the smile, Sunao is satisfied, but the girl in the uniform is starting to feel the edges of her own emptiness. It's a life of service where the thank you is a hand pushing her away. Morning light hits the lockers, and the nightmare of the bedroom fades into the awkward stumble of school. Nao apologizes to Sanada, her voice small, still carrying the weight of Sunao's warning. He just stands there, oblivious to the existential crisis, wondering if he was too rude by bringing a new fan to the clubroom. It's so ordinary it hurts. The fan hums in the corner of the clubroom, a rhythmic white noise that masks the tension. Sanada's already made himself at home, buried in a book while Ricchan handles the oversized garbage disposal of their broken memories. Nao watches him, trying to find where the girl she's replacing ends, and where her own feelings begin. He looks up, the light catching his eyes, and asks which book she prefers. The pressure from Sunao boils over into a clumsy defense. Nao stiffens, her words coming out like a prepared script she's forcing herself to read. She tells him that if they run into each other outside the club, he shouldn't speak to her. Sanada's confusion hits like a physical blow, forcing Nao to backpedal into a lie about moods and waves of social energy. She ends on a desperate note. I just don't want to put you through the discomfort of having to deal with that. Sanada doesn't just accept the rejection. He pushes back with a quiet, burning sincerity that makes Nao's heart skip. He tells her he can handle her rough days just fine. But then he falters, a blush creeping up his neck as he realizes how much he's admitting. He looks her in the eye, frustrated by his own honesty, and asks the question that shatters her resolve. What am I supposed to do when I'm the one striking up the conversation? The tension snaps into a flurry of nervous motion. Nao grabs her hair, desperate for a distraction, pulling it into a simple half-up style to hide her burning cheeks. It's a small human gesture, something the original Sunao would never bother with. She asks him what it's called, her fingers trembling slightly as she tucks the strands back, hoping the new look can hide the girl who is currently falling apart. Sanada stares, the words leaving him before he can check them. He tells her it suits her, and the clubroom suddenly feels 3 degrees hotter. Nao's heart is doing gymnastic routines in her chest, a physical reaction to a kindness she still hasn't figured out how to own. He promises to keep his hair tied up too, a clumsy pact of solidarity that leaves them both blushing at the floor. Despite the awkward vibes, she can't help it. Her heart is totally fluttering. Reality reasserts itself in the form of impending tests and unread literature. Nao dives back into her role as the diligent student, asking Sanada about his progress with Soseki's Kokoro. He looks away, the shadows of his hospital stay still lingering in his lack of motivation. He's been told it doesn't matter if he studies or not, a dismissal that makes him feel like a guest in his own life, much like the girl sitting across from him. The door bursts open and Ricchan bounces in, armed with pretz and enough energy to power a small city. She's the perfect antidote to the heavy silence, treating them both like regular seniors instead of ghosts. She's got a burning question for her Nao senpai, a request for advice that pulls Nao back into her comfortable role as the supportive mentor, even if it's all just another part of the act. Ricchan is stuck on a title for her novel, Double or Doppelganger? It's a light-hearted debate for the junior, but the words hit Nao like a physical weight. She explains the lore, how seeing your doppelganger means certain death, but then pivots to a story with a happy ending. She brings up The Little Mermaid Returns, a tale where the copy finds a way to exist. It's a hope she's desperately trying to believe in herself. She recounts the legend from 1985, a woman in a coma who is seen walking the beach at the same time. A spirit out of its body, a presence that shouldn't be there. The girl on the shore was a phantom, yet she regained consciousness exactly when her double vanished. They called her the Little Mermaid, a name for a miracle that came with a price. But Nao knows she's different from the stories. Sunao isn't in a coma. Her soul is intact, unaffected by the replica's existence. Nao is an intruder in a life that isn't empty. Ricchan claps her hands, eager for more founts of wisdom, but the laughter feels thousands of miles away. Nao stares at her own reflection in the table, the questions screaming in the silence of her mind. So then, as Sunao Aikawa's second with a face identical to hers, what on earth does that make me? Ricchan tries to break the mood, calling Nao a galaxy brain to Sanada, who barely looks up from his book. His muted reaction is its own kind of comedy. He's putting all his mental effort into reading Kokoro, leaving nothing for the chaotic energy swirling around him. The classroom board is covered in notes for English and Japanese history, a reminder that the world keeps turning even when your identity is a question mark. The tests are over and Ricchan's results are, in her own words, a mighty pile of crap. She's given up on academics in favor of the upcoming school trip, but Sanada is the real worry. He hasn't done an ounce of studying. He's counting on just showing up to class to avoid failing, a level of casual indifference that leaves Nao, who treats every social interaction like a final exam, completely baffled. He's no fun, but he's here. The talk turns to the school trip to Hamamatsu Flower Park, and Nao's eyes finally light up. This isn't part of Sunao's script. It's a genuine, bubbling excitement for a world she's only just beginning to see. She's talking about boat tours and zoological gardens with a fervor that catches Sanada off guard. Ricchan warns her not to fall overboard in her giddiness, but Nao's too busy being alive to worry about the water. The conversation spirals into the absurd when Ricchan mentions oyster catching at Lake Hamana. Nao's competitive streak flares up immediately. She's ready to dive in, gear or no gear, the moment she gets serious. The sheer ridiculousness of the plan finally breaks Sanada's composure. A genuine laugh escapes him, a sound that cuts through Nao's defensive walls like a hot knife. She freezes, wondering if he just laughed at her, or with her. Sanada wipes a tear from his eye, still chuckling. He admits he couldn't hold it back, telling them they make one hell of a comedy duo. Ricchan immediately starts brainstorming a stage name, Oyster and Button Shirt, but Nao is paralyzed by the warmth in his voice. For a moment, the clubroom isn't a place where she's hiding. It's a place where she's seen, even if it's as part of a joke. It's the most real she's ever felt. Her guard is down. The replica's self-awareness is slipping away, replaced by the simple, terrifying joy of being recognized as a separate entity. She isn't just Sunao's second right now. She's someone Sanada enjoys being around. She's finding beauty in the mundanity, a happiness that doesn't belong to the original she was modeled after. She's living a substitute life, but the smiles are starting to feel like they belong to Nao. But the script always comes back to the original. Sunao is bitter, resentful of the heat, and the trip she didn't get to go on. She questions Nao about it, her voice dripping with the entitlement of a creator. Nao plays it down, claiming it was nothing worth mentioning, but the guilt is a physical weight. Maybe the joy she felt was a sin, maybe what comes next is her punishment for forgetting her place. Back at school, the atmosphere is heavy. Sanada didn't have a great time on the trip, mostly because he didn't get a chance to talk to the one person he wanted to. He's sitting at his desk, staring out the window, the mundane cycle of school feeling more restrictive than ever. Nao approaches him, her heart thumping against her ribs, sensing a shift in the air that has nothing to do with the weather. He looks at her, noticing her hair is half up again, the style he liked. The classroom around them fades to static as he leans in, his voice low and dangerous to the status quo. He doesn't want to wait for the clubroom or the next approved social window. He asks the question that changes everything. In that case, want to go right now, just the two of us? It's a rebellion Nao never thought herself capable of. She's been spending all her time acting as Sunao, deceiving everyone around her, standing on hard gym floors for a girl who's probably asleep. But this is hers. She's traveling light, her heart beating a frantic badump against her chest. She agrees, and the fear of the punishment is drowned out by the sheer electricity of the yes. The uniform is Sunao's, the face is Sunao's, but the run belongs entirely to Nao. She's moving through the hallway, a blur of light brown hair and newfound purpose. The script is gone, the orders are forgotten. Today, right now, she isn't a replica or a second or a substitute. She is just herself, running toward a trip of her own. Reality hits them at the school gate. They have no money. Nao freezes in a cloud of gloom, her grand rebellion stalled by her empty pockets. Sanada offers to pay, but Nao's pride or maybe her panic won't let him. She's ready to dash all the way to Mochimoon Station and back in an hour just to keep the momentum alive. She's acting at max pace, a whirlwind of desperate energy. Sanada has a better plan. A borrowed bike. He knows a friend who leaves his unlocked, a bit of casual delinquency that Nao finds both terrifying and thrilling. She's surprised he even has friends, another reminder of how little she actually knows about the boy who's currently stealing her away from her own life. He checks if her legs will be all right, and she assures him she'll be fine. They're really doing this. The wind pulls at their hair as they pedal away from the school gates. It's the first time for both of them, a shared sin that feels like a sacred bond. Sanada looks at her, a small, genuine smile playing on his lips, and asks where she wants to go. The sky is wide, the road is open, and for the first time in her short existence, Nao doesn't have a pre-written answer. They settle on the zoo. Nao's heart is pounding, but not from the exercise. She's getting used to Sanada's voice deeper than her father's, scary at first, but now something that feels like home. They ride side by side through the quiet streets, two teenagers escaping the world. The question hangs in the air, unvoiced but impossible to ignore. Is this a first date? Sanada is waiting, standing by the residential gate like he's actually looking forward to being a delinquent for a day. Nao rolls her bike out, her eyes bright with a mix of nerves and pure, unadulterated excitement. He eyes the stuffed basket of her bicycle, looking at the sheer bulk she's managed to pack for a simple trip. That looks super heavy. They make a quick detour to a local Shinken bank, the kind of place where everyone knows your name and your business. Sanada takes charge, handling the heavy bag of coins Nao has been lugging around like it's nothing. Inside, the rhythmic, metallic clatter of the cash counting machine fills the lobby, turning Nao's secret savings into a digital reality. Sanada explains the strategy with a shrug, mentioning how using his account will save them on the handling fees. Nao stares at him, her hands fluttering in a frantic wave of gratitude that she can barely articulate. Underneath the thanks, a small cold voice reminds her that she's just a burden he's decided to carry for the afternoon. 198,750 yen. It's the weight of her entire existence in a single envelope, and Nao holds it over her head like a holy relic. She's practically glowing with the thrill of it, but Sanada just gives her a dry look, reminding her that he isn't about to pull some bank-robbing scheme. Shall we? Sanada checks the route on his phone, planning the transfer at Higashi Shizuoka Station with clinical precision. Nao watches him, her heart doing little flips, every time he refers to the two of them as a we on the train. She grips her bag tight, the world outside the window blurring into a smear of possibilities. Everything feels totally, terrifyingly awesome. The air in the train car suddenly feels very thin. Sanada looks away, a faint, uncharacteristic flush creeping up his neck as he admits this is his first time going out with a girl on his own. Now flinches, her ears turning bright red as she realizes they're sharing a first that neither of them expected to have today. They arrive at the Nihondera Zoo, the entrance gate looming like the mouth of a different world. Now is a ball of kinetic energy, her eyes darting between the signs while she mentally counts her fortune. She practically chirps when she announces she'll pay for the tickets, determined to be the one providing the joy for once. The clerk offers 2 different designs, and Nao's choice is instantaneous. She points at the fuzzy face on the ticket with a grin that could light up the entire park. The red panda one, Sanada watches her, his own expression softening just a fraction as he sees the pure, unshielded delight on the face of the girl who usually hides behind a replica's mask. A photographer stops them near the entrance, suggesting a commemorative photo with some novelty animal hats. Sanada looks like he'd rather be anywhere else, but Nao's eyes are already tracking the red panda gear. She doesn't just want a photo, she wants proof that this day, and this version of her, actually existed. Nao hands Sanada a polar bear hat with a straight face, insisting it's exactly his style. He looks absolutely ridiculous, a stoic boy in a plush animal head, but when Nao puts on her own red panda ears, she looks like she finally fits into the scenery. So cute, she whispers, her hands hovering near her face in a gesture of pure, childlike wonder. The photographer tells them to get a little closer, and the world shrinks down to the inches between their shoulders. Nao's heart is hammering against her ribs, loud enough she's sure he can hear it. The shutter clicks right as they both shout the password for the perfect smile, Red Panda. Nao beams at the printed photo, suggesting they display it in the literature club room, though Sanada's awkward silence says everything about his social anxiety. Her attention is immediately stolen by a flash of rust-colored fur as a real red panda scampers across a branch. She presses her face to the glass, her voice dropping to an awestruck whisper as she observes the tiny living creature. They lean over the railing together, watching the pandas sleep. Sanada asks if she's going to take any pictures, but Nao just shakes her head, her gaze fixed on the animals. The phone in her pocket belongs to the original Sunao, and she doesn't want to pollute this memory with a device that technically isn't hers. She'd rather just burn the image into her own retinas. Nao watches the pandas with a longing that goes deeper than just seeing an animal. For a second, her guard drops completely, and the words slip out before she can catch them. I want to spend my whole life here. Sanada blinks, startled by the intensity in her voice, but he quickly pivots to the next exhibit to keep the mood light. Polar bears. They move to the petting zoo, where Nao cradles a tiny yellow chick in her palms. It's soft and fragile, and its heartbeat is a tiny, frantic drumming against her skin. She realizes that while Sanada can be blunt, he has a quiet, observant kindness that makes her feel safe. It's so toasty. Lunchtime brings a new crisis. The menu is filled with food shaped like animals. Nao stares at a capybara stew, her heart breaking at the thought of digging a spoon into its peaceful vegetable broth face. She agonizes over the decision until she finally caves and orders ramen, leaving the cute culinary art safely on the menu. They find a bench to rest, the afternoon sun beginning to dip. Sanada looks exhausted, his shoulders slumped as he rubs his leg, a reminder that his hospitalization wasn't that long ago. He apologizes for dragging her along when he's the one who's flagging, but now just watches him, her chest tight with a gratitude she doesn't know how to pay back. Sanada's voice drops, becoming serious in a way that makes Nao's breath hitch. He asks her if it's true that something awful was done to her by a senpai, a question that cuts straight through her borrowed identity. Nao can only stare at him, the silence between them heavy with the secrets she isn't allowed to share. It wasn't me who ended up getting hurt. He suggests they head back soon, but he mentions how much she seemed to love the red pandas. Nao looks at the map, her desire to see them one last time warring with her knowledge that he needs to rest. She wants to stay in this bubble forever, but the real world is starting to bleed back into the edges of her vision. She forces a smile and insists on leaving, claiming it's not right to stay just because of her own selfish requests. Inside, her heart is breaking at the thought of leaving this perfect, stolen day. But Sanada just looks at her, his eyes soft as he promises that they can always come back here again whenever she wants. Nao turns to him, her eyes shining with unshed tears that capture the dying light of the afternoon. She doesn't just feel happy, she feels seen, for the first time in her short manufactured life. The words come out in a rush, a confession of gratitude for a day she never thought she'd be allowed to have. This has been the most fun day I've ever had in my life. She tells him that she only existed to be a replacement, but he was the one who whisked her away to somewhere real. Sanada just smirks, a genuine lopsided grin that makes his entire face change. He reaches out, his hand hovering near hers, as he brushes off her heavy confession with a simple, "Pff, you're so silly." Their hands brush, then join, a small, warm connection that feels more solid than anything else in the world. Now feels like her heart is turning into a balloon, ready to snap its strings and float off into the endless orange sky. For one perfect moment, she doesn't feel like a replica. She feels like a girl in love, with a life that finally belongs to her. The front door clicks shut, and the warmth of the day is instantly sucked out of the room. A dark silhouette waits in the hallway, the air around it heavy and static. Now freezes, her hand still on the doorknob as the girl whose identity she borrowed stares at her from the shadows. Sunao? Sunao knows everything. A call from Ricchan on the home phone gave the whole game away. Now bows her head, her apologies falling flat against the crushing weight of Sunao's disappointment. The true owner of that name steps closer, her voice a sharp blade cutting through Nao's fragile happiness, demanding that she stop this charade once and for all. Nao is practically trembling, her voice cracking as she begs for the right to just exist. She tries to explain that she hasn't taken a single thing from Sunao, that she's only been living the life that Sunao threw away. But the look in Sunao's eyes tells her that to the original, everything Nao has touched is now tainted. "Give me back. I'm begging you. Please stop it." Nao sees the flashes of a life that was never hers. The taste of stolen food, the warmth of a mother's arms. The simple rhythm of 3 meals a day. She realizes with a sickening lurch that she never had anything to call her own from the very start. She wasn't building a life, she was just haunting someone else's. The silhouette of the real Sunao grows larger, an ink blot spreading across Nao's vision. Sunao's presence is suffocating, a reminder that Nao wasn't created to be happy, she was summoned to be used. The boy, the zoo, the heart-soaring joy, it all feels like a crime she's being caught for. Sunao's eye fills the frame, a spiraling vortex of cold indifference that makes Nao feel like a cockroach trapped in a jar. The words aren't just an insult, they're a reality check that shatters the last of Nao's delusions. You're just a replica. Know your place. The memories of the day, the zoo, the laughter, the hand-holding, are being forcibly overwritten by the darkness of the room. Nao can feel herself fading, the identity of Sunao Aikawa being snatched back by its rightful owner. The final command is whispered into the void, a sentence that sounds like an execution. "You can just disappear for all I care." Nao reaches out, but her hand is already turning to static, dissolving into the black ink of the panels. She tries to call out one last time, a desperate plea for a life she only just started to live, but the darkness swallows her whole. The replica is gone, leaving behind nothing but an empty hallway and the memory of a day that never truly happened. He dives into the pages of Night Train to the Stars, as if the ink could explain the void in his chest. The story of 2 boys traveling through the cosmos, only for one to be left behind, hits too close to home. He lingers on the question that haunts every survivor of a shared moment. I can't help but wonder what is true happiness exactly. Even a replica falls in love, but the price of that heart is a ghosting that leaves no footprints. They sit side by side in the silence of his imagination. A boy and a girl who are physically together but exist in different dimensions. She's right there beside him, yet it feels like she's not there at all. Tick, tick. The calendar flips to August, and the heat begins to press down on him like a heavy blanket. Shuya is trapped in the amber of a long vacation, resting his chin on his hand as the city lights shimmer outside his window. Every second is a reminder that the world is moving forward while he's stuck on a loop of that final bright smile. The text blurs. He reads about Campanella's beautiful tears and the resolve to burn 100 times for the sake of everyone else's happiness. In the quiet of his room, the face of the girl from the zoo overlays the characters. He's looking for answers in a children's fantasy novel, searching for the logic behind why a girl who looked so happy could just vanish. He finishes the collection, closing the cover on the story of the parting of best friends. A heavy sigh escapes him, echoing off the bookshelves and the basketball he hasn't touched in weeks. It's a beautiful, tragic ending, the kind that makes the real world feel even colder by comparison. His phone sits on the bed, a black slab of useless glass. No notifications, no messages. He grips his hair in frustration, the realization finally sinking in. He went on a date. He felt the spark, but he never actually asked for her number. He stares at the ceiling and groans. I totally shoulda asked for your contact info. The first day of school arrives like a slap to the face. The sun is too bright, and the building is too loud. Then, he sees her, sitting at her desk, looking exactly like the girl he's been mourning all summer. He stops in the doorway, his heart doing a frantic double-take before he manages a tentative, "Yo." He leans in, trying to bring up the fan incident from before the break. It's an inside joke, a bridge back to the girl who blushed and skipped class with him. But as he talks, the girl in front of him doesn't soften. She just tilts her head, her eyes blank and searching. She isn't finishing his sentences, she's barely recognizing his face. The temperature in the room drops 40 degrees. Sunao leans her head on her hand, her gaze narrowing into something lethal and impatient. "Fan thing yesterday? What are you on about?" Shuya freezes, the air leaving his lungs. This isn't just a bad mood, it's a total erasure. He stammers out an apology. "It's nothing, don't worry, my bad." He backs away into the hallway, his mind racing to reconcile the two versions of the same girl. The girl he knew was a mess of blushes and frantic apologies, a person who felt so vibrant she was practically vibrating. This girl? She's a statue, cold, distant, and utterly disinterested in his existence. The fan on the desk sits between them like a relic from a dead civilization. He watches her from a distance, realizing she's someone who can turn on a dime. He had so much he wanted to say. He wanted to tell her that he finally found where Campanella went, that he'd walked hand in hand with her through his own starry night. But the words are dead in his throat. The girl he wanted to tell is gone. He tries to lose himself in the text again, but the sentences are hollow now. Every time he looks at a page, her face pops into his head. He hasn't seen her once since the break began, despite that lingering, hopeful smile she gave him when they parted. The wind chime hangs still in the summer heat, waiting for a breeze that never comes. He clings to a feeling, a desperate, irrational hope that if he just keeps looking, he'll find her. The girl with the half-up hairstyle, standing by her bike and waving him toward a future that felt real. He can still see her vividly, the light catching her hair as she waits for him to catch up. The school is alive with the usual post-summer chatter, students trading stories of beaches and part-time jobs. Shuya moves through the crowd like a ghost, his eyes scanning every head of long brown hair. He's searching for a needle in a haystack of normalcy, looking for the one person who doesn't seem to belong here anymore. The air in the hallway is still, thick with a heavy silence that only follows a total erasure. Shuya stands at the classroom door, his gaze anchored to the girl by the window. She's right there, same light brown hair, same profile, but the distance between them feels like it's stretching into miles. He watches her, waiting for a sign, a flicker of the warmth they shared at the zoo. But the girl in the frame doesn't turn around. He heads to the literature club, the last place where things made sense. But the room is quiet, the chairs empty and clinical under the fluorescent lights. Ritsuko is there, hunched over her work, but the seat next to her is vacant. It's the final confirmation of his fear. Looks like a no-show. Ritsuko looks up, her expression a mix of concern and defeat. She doesn't have good news. At this point, now senpai's been a no-show every day. The words hit like a physical blow. It's not just one missed day, it's a disappearance. He looks at the text he's been reading, the story of a train ride to the stars, and realizes the girl he met might have already reached the end of the line. The club room feels too small for the gravity of his thoughts. He sits across from Ritsuko, the silence between them filled with the ghost of a person who shouldn't have been able to just vanish. He can't shake the terrifying thought that she was never really there to begin with, a flicker on the water that's finally gone still. I couldn't help but fear the worst, that I might never see the girl with the half-up hair ever again. A month of silence is a long time to wonder if you've been erased for good. For now, the world just stopped, frozen in the moment she thought she'd never be called on by the original Sunao ever again. Then, a summons. Back in the uniform. Back in the skin of a girl who isn't her. Sunao lounges in pajamas, watching her double with a look that's half guilt, half boredom. She tosses out the question like it's nothing. You going out with Sanada? Now just realizes that even the original can get scared. Walking back into school feels like stepping onto a tightrope. A replica shouldn't know what it feels like to fly, but once you've felt your feet leave the ground for just one day, the gravity of being a fake starts to pull twice as hard. The morning sun is too bright, the classroom noise too loud, and then, there he is. Shuya doesn't just say hello, he's looking for something specific, his eyes searching for a hairstyle that isn't there. Now fumbles, her hands reaching for hair that's down instead of half up. She's ready to lie, ready to hide, until he cuts through the noise with a question that makes the floor drop away. He leans in, voice low and certain. Are you Sunao Aikawa's body double? The chair hits the floor with a deafening clatter. She doesn't think, she just runs. Her lungs burn as she tears through the hallway, desperate to find anywhere that feels far away from the truth he just spat out. Every part of her belongs to someone else. The uniform, the skin, even the warmth of a mother's chest she only remembers by proxy. If she's not Sunao Aikawa, then she's a ghost with nowhere to haunt. A hand clamps onto hers, stopping the world mid-spin. He's right there, breath hitching, eyes seeing right through her defenses. She tries to pull away, a shaky lie already on her lips. I'm not crying. The panic subsides into an awkward, heavy silence. He notices she's finally wearing her hair the way he remembered, and the apology comes out soft as they head for a bench to finally face what happened. They sit, the space between them filled with more than just air. Shuya admits he's been feeling it too, that nagging sense of being out of place, even back when things seemed normal. He talks about the Shuya who didn't care about exams, the one who visited the zoo. It's like he's describing a character in a book he read once, and the boy sitting here now can't find his own reflection in that story. In class, they study Kokoro, dissecting the reasons why someone would choose to end it all. Now finds her gaze fixed on the profile of the boy next to her, wondering how they're both still here when their very existence feels like an accident. She hasn't ever wanted to hurt the original, but she doesn't want to fade away either. If there's a chance to see the red pandas at the zoo again tomorrow, then maybe she's got a reason to keep breathing. The masks finally slip. Shuya locks eyes with her, a small, sad smile playing on his lips. The guy you're looking at isn't Shuya Sanada. And now lets the last of her secret go. I'm not Sunao Aikawa either. It's a bizarre support group of two. He's Gen 2, and she's the second. They trade the awful nicknames their originals gave them like war stories, finding a strange bitter comfort in knowing they both hate the labels. The timelines don't match, but the feeling does. Shuya was born in the heat of July, right after a hospital discharge. Now has been at this since elementary school, long enough to watch childhood friendships bloom and forget they weren't hers to begin with. Sunao used to call her Now, but then the name soured. She became a second, a version that only has value as long as the original exists, a shadow that realizes it's tethered to a girl who doesn't want to share the light anymore. He looks at her, truly seeing her for the first time. How about I call you Now, too? It's a small theft from the original, but she takes it, offering a new name back, Aki-kun? From that moment on, they aren't just shadows. They have names that belong only to them. In a moment of pure clarity, the boy sitting on the bench is just Aki, and the girl beside him is Now. The conversation turns to the real Shuya. He hasn't been out once since the leg injury, skipping the rehab he needs to ever play basketball again. It's been half a year of stagnation, a life left on a shelf. She wanted to find a reason to hate him, to blame him for the confusion, but looking at him now, she just can't do it. They're both just pieces in a game, neither of them asked to play. She feels a sharp, sudden pity for a guy like Shuya. To lose the thing you love most, to have your heart go hollow because a bone snapped, is a weight no replica can fully understand. Aki remembers how much the original loved being part of the team, the hours spent on the court. He speaks with a quiet, dark certainty that chills the air. That's why, soon, I will too. The words hang there, heavy and unfinished. Aki looks out at the trees, his silhouette beginning to blur into the afternoon shadows. Now will come to regret not asking him to finish that sentence, because some premonitions are too dark to ignore.